And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. I am your sensei, Albon, here to tell you stories. So this digital world we live in only gonna get worse. You pay a bill, AI will say, no, you didn't. That is fake news. So, oh, having breakfast. Loaded up. Mm. Conscious intent. I am.
Guns and knives. Peter? Guns and knives. Peter? Vic. I don't want to shoot with you, Harvey.
I'm good. I have a little
Anything you
box.
say, Butch. Sundance? When we're done, he's dead. You're welcome to stay.
Listen, I don't mean to be a sore loser, but when it's done, if I'm dead, kill me. Love me. No, not yet. Me and Harvey get the rules straightened out.
Rules? In a knife fight?
Thanks, bud.
No rules. What?
Well, if there ain't gonna be any rules, let's get the fight started. Someone count 1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go.
I was really rooting for you, but U.S. Air Force's top veteran pilot, John J.V. Venable, who served.
Chris Hedges, let's see. We're gonna go look at what other Chris Hedges stories we got here. Here's a good one.
So they were
is no longer within the lost promise American universities in the 1960s. The American dream of high quality, affordable mass higher education is no longer within reach of many Americans. Tuitions, once low, if not free, have soared. With them, tremendous student debt. Although the Biden administration has made an effort to reduce the Biden administration has made an effort to reduce the Biden administration has made an effort to reduce the Biden administration has made an effort to
See what I mean? It's just really, really. So you can be either annoyed, frustrated, fearful, scared, or self-medicated. This is almost self-medicated. Licking the plant. Pretty yummy in the tummy. So I woke up this morning with stars, and then watched the sunrise, did my exercise and prayed, and did a few things. How I wash my clothes is I hang them all up on the rope, and then wait for it to rain. If not, I use a hose. Then I spray some detergent on it, then let it rain, or use the hose. Then I let the sun get it dry-ish, and then I put it in the wood stove dryer. So that's was my morning thing. I listened to the birds singing, and they're all around because I have I live in a swamp cooler, and so there's a lot of buggy bugs, and so the birds just love them. And I don't really feed them mosquitoes, gnats, whatever. Right? They go get them. So we could talk about a lot of things, wars. It's mind-boggling. And our little getting rid of the credit ceiling. So we took out $1 trillion worth of discretionary spending, but we upped the military spending, right? And it's like that is the dynamic of the end of the empire. That whole Henry Kissinger guy. I mean, let's see. What we got here?
Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, and the genocide in Cambodia are often used to justify further U.S. military involvement elsewhere in the world. In the case of Cambodia, did U.S. policy lead to genocide?
So, William Shawcroft in the late 70s wrote a Sideshow, and that was the first book to make the case that Kissinger's bombing of Cambodia creates the conditions for the rise of the Khmer Rouge. I actually deal with that argument extensively in at least one chapter in this book, because Kissinger is obsessed with that argument in every memoir that he's written. He's tried to refute it without actually mentioning Shawcroft's name. Ben Kiernan, an historian of Cambodia at Yale University, was extremely helpful in helping me work through a lot of the cause and effect between Kissinger's bombing and the rise of the Khmer Rouge. The bombing of Cambodia continued until August 1973, when Congress finally put a halt to it. But the worst of the bombing happened in the last 4 months of that year. The U.S. dropped more bombs in the middle of 1973 on Cambodia than it did in the previous 3 or 4 years combined. It was devastating. Kissinger often likes to make this joke that I will accept responsibility for the Khmer Rouge if the British, this was to a BBC reporter, if you admit that your bombing of Hamburg, led to the Holocaust. Of course, it's a crazy, fatuous analogy, because the bombing of Hamburg took place after the rise of the Nazis. The bombing of Cambodia took place before the rise of the Khmer Rouge. But I think in the clumsiness of that analogy is actually something very instructive. Kissinger can't explain away the Khmer Rouge. What Ben Kiernan argues, and others have argued, is it's not that there wasn't an eliminationist strand within the Khmer Rouge represented by Pol Pot. It's that the massive bombing of Cambodia, and including everything else that it did, the coups and the invasions and the telegraphing of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, it greatly increased the power of what had been a small faction within the Khmer Rouge, that genocidal faction, to take power. So I think there is a direct cause and effect relationship between Kissinger's bombing and Pol Pot's genocide. And it's a question that Kissinger has gone to great pains to to try to distance himself from. But I think it's one of the most damning accusations and accurate.
Saddam Hussein was a close U.S. ally throughout the 1980s. Why did Washington, particularly the Clinton administration, and later the George W. Bush administration, turn against him?
Well, by that point, the U.S. had made regime change official policy. The Clinton administration it passed Congress. The Clinton administration signed off on it. Well, this is the question, right? How much ideology versus interest? I mean, one could imagine, a kind of more instrumental, realist understanding of power, like, why? What's the insanity? We could have added Gene Kirkpatrick. What does it matter who pumps the oil, right? And this is where I think ideology does come in and does explain. I think that the question of, what drives U.S. foreign policy is real interests or domestic ideology. I mean, I often fall on the side of domestic ideology. I think the neoconservative movement, which saw as its historical mission as rolling back the Vietnam syndrome, had committed itself to taking out Saddam Hussein one way or the other. Pre 9/11, by the way, Wolfowitz and Kagan. I mean, Wolfowitz and Kagan, they were writing articles, pre 9/11. Wolfowitz wrote an article celebrating the fact that Clinton was bombing everybody, but then complaining that there weren't enough casualties because it didn't give us a sense of what it took, right? There was, there's a strong theme within the kind of neoconservative project that war is really about hardening domestic politics and overcoming the domestic flab over civilization, over a softness that has overtaken us. And remember, after 9/11, this was a sentiment that was shared across the political spectrum. George Packer, right? David Brooks, everybody was excited about 9/11 because finally we had a sense of ourselves again, and that's a current that I think Kissinger represents, and it's a critique that Kissinger has had of American power since the 50s, and I think by tracing it out, again, it's not to blame Kissinger for everything, but understanding how he represents this deeper current in U.S. militarism.
There are aspects of foreign policy I and many other people I know strongly disagree with. What can we do to hold accountable our leaders who commit crimes?
It's hard, and it's often depressing to know what to do, considering the impunity in which so many people in our political and economic class act. I guess.
Yeah. We're calling Putin a devil. I mean, what did we do for 20 years in the Mideast, And that was, you heard him too, toughen up, meaning the war is coming home, kids, if you haven't figured that out by now. And it's all told. I mean, again, the getting rid of the limits on our credit card for 2 years. Biden, gave up a bunch of things. Most of them environmental ones. Yeah, his big, anti-inflation thing was supposed to be an environmental whoop-de-doo, and so one of the things is that the mountain pipeline that goes through Virginia from West Virginia, bringing fracked oil from Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia down to a more transportable place, but really to bring gas along the 980 lines, a major infrastructure of our electric system is right through Virginia. I mean, the distribution, coming from different places. And instead of us building a few more nuclear reactors, we're going to put about 100 gas turbine electric generators, each being able to generate enough for maybe 100,000 homes. So a few hundred, that's a couple million homes. That's enough to be able to charge your car. Right? So that electric car is supposed to be, carbon footprint free. Not really. And again, it's all being paid for by the stockholders who have no, 3 years ago, in the stock meeting for Sunoco and ExxonMobil, the stockholders basically said, "Oh, we have to figure out a plan how to step back from hydrocarbons from oil and gas, right? So let's spend about $100 million and figure that out, which, the federal government was happy to give to them, right? So they did a study. And then this week, not this week, soon as the Congress had got this thing through Congress, the meeting yesterday was, I think they're still meeting too. The major stockholders of those three companies, Sunoco, ExxonMobil, which is now one company, is basically the Rothschild economic dynamic, the Rockefeller economic dynamic, JP Morgan economic dynamic, and a couple entities like, what was the Carlyle Group, and the thing that Warren Buffett has, right? So that group controls about 59%, right? And the other, 31% is everybody else, all the other, guys. Anyway, they were the driving voice to, hey, we have to back oil. We have to figure out, invest in something else. And just like, 20 years ago when BP changed their logo from BP to a big sun, like, oh, we're going into solar power. We're going to be a green. They were the first green company, and they were an oil company, please. So it's so those large guys who own 59% of those companies said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to go full bore with oil, right? We're not going to hold back whatsoever. Same thing with plastics. That same crew had said, oh, we have to stop plastics. Well, why do plastics exist? It's because they're made from oil. And it was pretty obvious that the transportation scene was going to go less and less and less on oil, at least inefficient oil, that could be massively put into place to make big profits. You have, they said, no, sorry, we're going to keep, we're going to have that. Right now, they're having a, Kerry's right there now, having a big whoop-de-doo about, hey, plastic bags. And the third world are doing their best, right? But we aren't. We're still manufacturing and bubble wrapping and making, wrapping everything in plastic. Other I forgot which Asian country is like basically making wrapping material out of seaweed, which is probably more prolific than oil, right? So and then there's Myanmar, right, where Aung San Suu Kyi was the president, and she had led a people's revolution, a peaceful one, to turn their autocratic society into a democracy. And as they were doing it, the army had a pooch and put her in jail. And now they're that Myanmar's the largest producer of crystal meth in the world, right? Not China. And you don't think that the CIA had something to do with that? And who the frack is the CIA anyway? Let's ask Google. What is love? 13 of you guys watched it 2 days ago. 36. Let's hear from you. 2 people left me a comment. I went to look at the comment, and when I pushed the comment, it disappeared. Right now, it's not wanting to do what I want it to do. Come on. Do. everybody wants to blame, Henry Kissinger because he's 100 years old now, but he is just, the guy we can shoot at. He is just the guy that.
What I would say is look to Latin America. Latin America has a long
1-800-444-1977. That's 1-800-444-1977. Or you can go online, our website, alternativeradio.org.
I would say you guys should go check that out. This guy, David, he has been interviewing and going to lectures and recording them since the 70s. He's got a library that's mind freaking boggling, right? Let's see what this is.
Only action, he wrote in 1957, could void the systemic incentive. Only action could overcome the paralyzing fear of the drastic consequences that might result from action. And there he's talking about the willingness to use limited nuclear weapons in a war with the Soviet Union. The purpose of American power then was to create an awareness of American power, of American purpose. We can't defend our interests until we know what our interests are, and we can't know what our interests are until we defend them. Kissinger taught that there was no such thing as stasis in international affairs. Great states are always either gaining or losing influence, which means that the balance of power has to be constantly tested through gesture and through deed. I focus a good deal on Cambodia as a good example of this perpetual motion machine, as has been demonstrated by other historians, most recently by Ken Hughes in a wonderful book called Chasing Shadows. Kissinger helped get Nixon elected in 1968 by derailing the Paris peace talks, passing on information that Nixon then used to convince South Vietnam not to agree to any deal that Washington or Hanoi might make in order to wait that they get a better deal if Nixon was president. Nixon won that election. He beat Humphrey. He appointed Kissinger national security advisor. But then Nixon and Kissinger, as I mentioned earlier, had to figure out a way to resume the peace talks, which they helped derail because Nixon had been elected promising to get the U.S. out of the war. There were a few other reasons for bombing Cambodia to disrupt the supply of munitions.
So, here, it made no sense. We killed 6 million people, No one's ever really called us on it. Most people, well, it was just a Vietnam War. We were in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, that whole corner there, right? Philippines. So, again, it's this larger picture of Mr. Globoni, right? The hidden hand, the high table, and but they're not. All of these things, you step back and you get a perspective, and it's. And now we're going into AI, and all of the godfathers of AI, all the guys who, got AI going, basically are saying, they're all old. They all got a lot of money in the bank. And now it's kind of like Eisenhower, He waited till the end of his career to talk about the military-industrial complex. He had been part of it for his whole career, since he was like 17. And the last hours of his presidency, he gives that speech, which, at least you got to hand it to him. I mean, he just wanted to wash his hands. He was like Pontius Pilate, when Pontius Pilate asked, was it true, asked Jesus, was it true that you're God? And he said, I am truth. He didn't say it was God. I am truth. Right? And those who know me and have faith in me know truth. So that's why Eisenhower kind of did what he did. Okay.
Kissinger Kissingerism. This is independent alternative radio. For copies of this program, just call us at 1-800-Kissingerism. This is...
To be one of the first, you needed live bodies. Existential risk.
And then there are other risks that are actually, going on with AI: discrimination, bias, privacy, and so on. So we need to beef up that legislative and regulatory body, and what we need there is a regulatory framework that's going to be very adaptive, because there's a lot of unknown. It's not like we know precisely how bad things can happen. We need to do a lot more in terms of monitoring, validating, and we need and controlling access so that not any bad actor can easily get their hands on dangerous technologies. And we need the body that will regulate, or the bodies across the world, to be able to change their rules as new nefarious uses show up, or as technology advances. And that's
once again bring Max Tegmark into the conversation. Max Tegmark is MIT professor focused on artificial intelligence. His recent Time magazine article, "The Don't Look Up Thinking That Could Doom Us with AI." If you could explain that point, Professor Tegmark, and also why you think right now, many people have just heard the term Chat GPT for the first time in the last months. The general public has become aware of this, and how you think it is most effective to regulate AI technology.
Yeah, thank you for the great question. I wrote this piece comparing what's happening now in AI with the movie Don't Look Up, because I really suspect we're all living this film where, as a species, confronting the most dramatic thing that has ever happened to us, where we may be losing control over our future, and almost no one...
Ways to control the climate.
We don't know if it's possible to create a cloud in the stratosphere or to brighten clouds out over the ocean, the two ideas that people are looking at. But be that difficult, we don't know. I don't know what motivates the CIA. I guess they want to protect the United States. But we can't think of any way that you could control the climate of one part of the world without controlling the whole world. Putting clouds in the stratosphere would have a global effect, not a local effect. And so it's hard to think of a way it could actually be weaponized, but maybe they want to think about that. I don't know.
Geoengineering is weather modification on a global scale. Many refer to this as chemtrails. The dispute as to whether or not these programs are going on is really a moot point. We have more than enough data. We have actual footage.
As you're seeing now, to show that these tankers are indeed spraying at altitude. The materials we see showing up on the ground are the exact materials named in numerous geoengineering patents, as many as 150 patents. So at this point, the notion that these programs are not going on is simply denial. Skies like this, many have grown to think are natural, but they're anything but. And we've seen this for so long now, and it's been ramped up.
Dad, what's wrong with the telly?
Talking about it. So I'm so grateful to you and others for actually starting to have that conversation now. And that's a good evening.
Allow me first to apologize for this emergency challenge. I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, sincerity of the familiar, and tranquility, repetition.
Good.
Dad, what's wrong with the telly?
emergency channel. I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquility, repetition. I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration, whereby those important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak. Just let me think. Even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way.
It's chances that.
Damn it. Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth isn't wrong, isn't that?
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
Cruelty and injustice. Depression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission.
Cameras.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others. They will be held accountable. Again,
That legislative and regulatory body, and what we need there is a regulatory framework is going to be very adaptive because there's a lot of unknown. It's not like we know precisely how bad things can happen. We need to do a lot more in terms of monitoring, validating, and we need and controlling access so that not any bad actor can
important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday. I thought we could mark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak.
Just let me think.
Even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way.
It's chances that.
Damn it. Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means.
The don't look up thinking that could doom us with AI. If you could explain that point, Professor Tegmark, and also why you think right now, many people have just heard the term Chat GPT for the first time in the last months. The general public has become aware of this, and how you think it is most effective to regulate AI technology.
Yeah, thank you for the great question. I wrote this piece comparing what's happening now in AI with the movie Don't Look Up, because we're all living this film where, as a species, confronting the most dramatic thing that has ever happened to us, where we may be losing control over our future, and almost no one is talking about it. So I'm so grateful to you and others for actually starting to have that conversation now. And that's, of course, why we had these open letters that you just referred to here, to really help mainstream this conversation that we have to have. That people previously used to make fun of you when you even brought up the idea that we could actually lose control of this and go extinct, for example.
Mr. Tegmark, you've drawn analogies, in fact, when it comes to regulation with the regulations that were put in place on biotech and physics. So could you explain how that might apply to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, to appreciate what a huge deal this is when the top scientists in AI are warning about extinction, it's good to compare it with the other two times in history that it's happened, that leading scientists warned about the very thing they were making. It happened once in the 1940s when physicists started warning about nuclear Armageddon. And it happened again in the early 1970s with biologists saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't start making clones of humans and edit the DNA of our babies. And the biologists have been the big success story here. I think that should inspire us AI researchers today because it was deemed so risky that we would lose control over our species back in the 70s that we actually decided as a world society to not do human cloning and to not edit the DNA of our offspring. And here we are with a really flourishing biotech industry that's doing so much good in the world. And so the lesson here for AI is that we should become more like biology. We should recognize that in biology, no company has the right to just launch a new medicine and start selling it in supermarkets without first convincing experts from the government that this is safe. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration in the US, for example. And with particularly high risk uses of AI, we should aspire to something very similar, where the onus is really on the companies. Prove something extremely powerful is safe before it gets deployed.
Last fall, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy published a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights and called it a vision for protecting our civil rights in the algorithmic age. This comes amidst growing awareness about racial biases embedded in artificial intelligence and how it impacts the use of facial recognition programs by law enforcement and more. I want to bring into this conversation with Professors Tegmark and Bengio, Tawana Petty, Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Algorithm Justice League, longtime digital and data rights activist. Tawana Petty, welcome to Democracy Now! You are not only warning people about the future, you're talking about the uses of AI right now and how they can be discriminatory. Can you explain?
Yes, thank you for having me, Amy. Absolutely. I must say that the contradictions have been heightened with the godfather of AI and others.
Words for the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there? You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London. Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and suppressing your submission. We need cameras. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others.
Algorithmic discrimination protections, data privacy, notice and explanation, and human alternatives consideration and fallback. And so at the Algorithmic Justice League, we have been responding to existing harms of algorithmic discrimination that date back many years prior to this almost robust narrative reshaping conversation that has been happening over the last several months with artificial general intelligence. So we're already seeing harms with algorithmic discrimination in medicine. We're seeing the pervasive surveillance that is happening with law enforcement using face detection systems to target community members during protests, squashing not only our civil liberties and rights to organize and protest, but also the misidentifications that are happening with regard to false arrests that we've seen. Two very prominent cases started off in Detroit. And so there are many examples of existing harms that it would have been really great to have these voices of mostly white men who are in the tech industry who did not pay attention to the voices of all those women who were lifting up these issues many years ago. And they're talking about these futuristic possible risks when we have so many risks that are happening today.
So, Professor Max Tegmark, if you could respond to what Tawana Petty said, and the fact that others have also said that the risks have been vastly overstated in that letter, and more importantly, given what Tawana has said, that it distracts from already existing effects of artificial intelligence that are widely in use already?
I think this is a really important question here. There are people who say that one of these kinds of risks distracts from the other. I strongly support everything we heard here from Tawana. I think these are all very important problems, examples of how we're giving too much control already to machines. But I strongly disagree that we should have to choose about worrying about one kind of risk or the other. That's like saying we should stop working on cancer prevention because it distracts from stroke prevention. These are all.
Yeah. That sounds like today's guns or knives, guns or knives, guns or knives. You having fun yet? Nobody's watching. I guess people are too, they want a fun story. They want platypus. They want John Birmingham. And when you watch John, if you're at all a human being that has sympathy, you watch John suffering. That's why I call him the canary in the social coal mine. So, anyway, let's see what 10:53, 57 minutes. Nobody's watching. No one cares. Oh, well, if anyone reaches this part of the video, you want to send something to PayPal, that'd be great. Remember, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail. I will probably come on later this afternoon. Maybe you guys can jump in. I'd say around 3 o'clock. Okay? Okay.